They called her the throwaway. For 21 years, Soraya Ven had been the shadow in the corner of the obsidian Fang pack house. She washed their bloodied linens. She scraped rotting meat from their plates. She slept in a basement so damp that mold grew on her pillow. They thought she was broken. A wolf-less Omega cursed by the moon goddess herself. A body to bruise when the ranked wolves needed to feel powerful. But Soraya had a secret buried so deep, even she didn't know it existed. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was a cage. And the beast sleeping inside that cage was older than the pack, older than the kingdom, older than the laws that made her a slave. When Alpha King Valdric Thorn stood before the gathered masses and declared, "I can claim 30 Omegas like you," he expected her to weep, to beg, to submit like every other broken thing he had collected. Instead, Soraya looked into the eyes of the most powerful wolf on the continent and said 2 words that shattered 1,000 years of tradition. "Then do it." And she walked away. "Get ready. The nightshade wolf is waking up, and the thrones of the mighty are about to crumble to ash." The basement of the obsidian Fang pack house smelled of rust, wet stone, and decades of despair. Soraya woke before dawn, as she always did. The thin blanket she slept under was crusted with frost from the cracked window above her cot. Her breath came out in pale clouds. Winter had sunk its teeth into the northern territories early this year, and no one had bothered to fix the heating duct that fed into the servants' quarters. She dressed quickly in the dark, a gray cotton dress patched so many times it was more thread than fabric. No shoes. Omegas weren't permitted shoes inside the main house. The cold marble was meant to remind them of their place. At the bottom. Always at the bottom. Soraya climbed the narrow staircase to the kitchen. The head cook, a thick-armed beta named Gregor, shoved a bucket and rag into her hands without looking at her. "The Great Hall. Alpha Regent Fenrath wants it spotless before the delegation arrives. Move." She didn't ask questions. Questions earned bruises. The Great Hall of the Obsidian Fang compound was a monstrous space. Vaulted ceilings, pillars carved with the snarling faces of wolves, long dead. A fireplace large enough to roast a carriage. Soraya had scrubbed every inch of this room more times than she could count. She dropped to her knees and began. The cold seeped through the thin fabric of her dress as she worked. Her hands, already chapped from yesterday's lye soap, split and bled against the bristles of the brush. She didn't wince. Pain was an old companion. Well, the little ghost is up early." Soraya's stomach clenched. Cressida Vane emerged from the shadows of the east corridor, flanked by 2 Omega servants who carried her tea tray and fur shawl. Cressida was the daughter of Alpha Regent Fenrath, the man who ruled the Obsidian Fang Pack until the true Alpha King returned from his conquest campaigns. She was beautiful the way a viper is beautiful. Gleaming auburn hair, eyes like polished amber, a figure that made unmated wolves stumble over their own feet. And she hated Soraya with a passion that bordered on obsession. "I heard a rumor," Cressida said, circling Soraya like a predator scenting weakness. "The delegation arriving today isn't just any delegation, it's the Alpha King himself, Valdric Thorn." Soraya kept scrubbing. She had learned long ago that eye contact was an invitation for violence. "Do you know what that means, ghost girl?" Cressida crouched down, her silk dress pooling on the wet floor. She gripped Soraya's chin, forcing her head up. "It means the claiming ceremony is tonight. Every unmated Omega in the territory will be presented to him." Soraya's heart stumbled. The claiming ceremony, a tradition as old as the wolf kingdoms themselves. The Alpha King had the right to claim any unmated Omega as part of his harem. No refusal. No appeal. Once claimed, an Omega belonged to the crown until death. "You'll be on that stage tonight," Cressida whispered, her nails digging into Soraya's jaw. A pathetic, wolfless runt displayed like defective cattle. And when he passes you over, when he laughs at the very sight of you, I want you to remember this moment. She shoved Soraya's face down toward the bucket. Dirty water splashed across Soraya's cheeks. Remember that I told you so. Cressida rose, smoothing her dress as if she hadn't just committed casual cruelty. Finish the haul, then report to the grooming quarters. Even garbage needs to be presentable. She swept away, her servants scurrying behind her. Soraya stayed frozen on her hands and knees. Water dripped from her chin. Her jaw throbbed where Cressida's nails had broken skin. But beneath the humiliation, beneath the cold and the pain, something else stirred. A heat. It started in the pit of her stomach, a flicker of warmth that had no source. It spread through her chest, tingling down her arms, pooling in her fingertips. Soraya stared at her hands. For just a moment, a single heartbeat, she could have sworn her veins glowed faint violet beneath her skin. Then it was gone. She blinked, shaking her head. Exhaustion. That's all it was. 21 years of malnutrition and sleepless nights playing tricks on her. She picked up the brush and resumed scrubbing. But deep in the shadows of her mind, something opened one eye. Soon, it whispered. The grooming quarters were a chaos of scented oils, heated irons, and frantic omegas. Soraya stood in the corner, ignored as always, while the ranked servants fussed over the presentable candidates, daughters of betas, nieces of warriors, omegas with wolves, who had simply been unlucky enough to remain unclaimed past their 20th year. No one touched Soraya. No one offered her oils for her damaged skin or silk for her battered dress. She was given a plain white shift, the kind reserved for Kaim kitchen staff, and told to stand at the end of the line, the reject's position. By the time dusk fell, the great hall had been transformed. Thousands of candles flickered from iron chandeliers. A carpet of deep crimson ran from the main doors to the elevated dais where a throne of black iron waited. The throne of the Alpha King. Soraya filed in with the other Omegas, 37 in total, arranged in a crescent formation facing the throne. She kept her head down, her hands clasped in front of her. The white shift was too thin. She could feel the cold radiating from the stone floor through her soles. Trumpets blared. The massive oak doors swung open, and Valdric Thorn walked in. The air itself seemed to bow before him. He was tall, broad-shouldered, clad in black leather armor that gleamed like oil. His hair was dark as a moonless night, swept back from a face that was brutally handsome, all sharp angles and predatory focus. His eyes were the color of molten gold, and they swept across the room with the casual arrogance of a man who had never been denied anything. Behind him came his entourage, generals, advisors, his personal guard, wolves so massive they barely looked human even in their skin forms. Valdric ascended the dais and lowered himself onto the throne. He didn't sit. He sprawled, one leg thrown over the armrest, a goblet of wine appearing in his hand as if by magic. "Begin," he said, his voice deep and bored. Alpha Regent Fenrath stepped forward, bowing so low his forehead nearly touched the ground. "My king, the Obsidian Fang Pack presents its unmated Omegas for your consideration. Each has been verified pure, healthy, and—" "I don't need the sales pitch, Fenrath." Valdric sipped his wine. "Parade them." One by one, the Omegas stepped forward. Each spoke their name, their lineage, their wolf's form. Each received a dismissive glance or, if they were lucky, a lingering look that meant they would be considered. The line dwindled. Soraya's pulse hammered against her ribs. Finally, it was her turn. She stepped forward on trembling legs. The silence was suffocating. She could feel 500 pairs of eyes boring into her, could smell the disdain radiating from the ranked wolves in the gallery. "Name," Fenrath snapped, barely concealing his embarrassment at having to present her. "Soraya Ven." "Lineage." "Unknown." Orphan. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Valdric leaned forward, his amber gaze narrowing with something between curiosity and amusement. Wolf? He asked directly, breaking protocol. Soraya swallowed. I have no wolf, my king. Laughter erupted from the gallery. Cruel, barking laughter that echoed off the stone walls. Cressida's voice rose above the rest, sharp and mocking. Valdric didn't laugh. He studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He set down his goblet. He rose from the throne and descended the steps until he stood directly before her. This close, his presence was overwhelming. His scent, cedar and smoke and iron, flooded her senses. Her body screamed at her to submit, to bare her throat, to kneel. She didn't. She met his gaze. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, irritation, hunger. His mouth curved into a razor-sharp smile. Wolfless, he murmured, loud enough for the hall to hear. Orphaned, nameless, and yet you look at me like you're my equal. Soraya said nothing. Valdric leaned closer, his breath hot against her ear. I can claim 30 omegas like you, he whispered. Snap my fingers and have you dragged to my chambers in chains. You are nothing. The hall waited in breathless silence, and something inside Soraya, something old, something furious, finally snapped its chains. Soraya felt the words rise from somewhere deeper than her throat, deeper than her chest. They came from a place she didn't know existed, a molten core of fury that had been building for 21 years. She stepped back from Valdric Thorn. The Alpha King's smile faltered. No Omega stepped back from him. They stepped closer. They submitted. They wept with gratitude at even a moment of his attention. Then do it. Her voice rang through the great hall like a bell struck in perfect silence. Valdric blinked. What did you say? You said you can claim 30 omegas like me. Soraya's hands were trembling, but her voice held steady. So do it. Claim them. Fill your harem with 100 wolfless orphans if that's what satisfies you. She turned her back on him. The collective gasp from the crowd was so sharp it sounded like a wound. No one turned their back on the Alpha King. No one. But you will not claim me? She walked. 1 step, 2 steps. The crimson carpet stretched before her like a river of blood. The massive oak doors seemed impossibly far away. Stop. Valdric's command was laced with alpha dominance, a psychic weight designed to buckle the knees of any wolf beneath his rank. Soraya felt it crash against her like a wave against a cliff. She did not stop. She kept walking. Behind her, she heard Valdric descend from the dais. His footsteps were thunder on the stone floor. I said stop, Omega. The pressure doubled, tripled. Soraya's vision blurred at the edges. Her legs screamed at her to collapse, to crawl back to him and beg forgiveness. Every instinct drilled into her since birth demanded submission. She took another step. How? Valdric's voice had lost its arrogance. It was raw now, confused, and almost desperate. How are you resisting? Soraya reached the doors. She placed her palm against the cold oak, feeling the iron hinges beneath her fingertips. She looked over her shoulder. Valdric Thorn stood frozen in the center of the great hall, surrounded by 500 of his subjects, his molten stare wide with something she had never expected to see. Fear. Because, Soraya said softly, I am not yours to command. She pushed open the doors and walked into the night. The cold hit her like a physical blow. Snow had begun to fall, thick white flakes that melted against her thin shift and plastered her hair to her skull. She had no shoes, no coat, no destination. She didn't care. For the first time in her miserable existence, Soraya Venn had chosen her own path. Even if that path led to her death, it was hers. She made it 50 paces from the pack house before the shouting began. Find her! Bring her back! Torches flickered to life. The baying of wolves in their shifted forms echoed across the frozen courtyard. The hunt was on. Soraya ran, her soles sliced against the icy cobblestones. Blood left crimson footprints in the snow behind her. She didn't feel the pain. She was beyond pain now, operating on something primal. The tree line loomed ahead, the black pine forest that bordered the obsidian fang territory. If she could reach the trees, if she could disappear into the shadows, a massive black wolf cut off her path. Cressida. Even in wolf form, Soraya recognized those amber eyes, burning with hatred. Cressida had shifted and outpaced her, circling around to block her escape. Behind Soraya, more wolves emerged from the darkness. 5, 10, 20. The entire pack guard surrounding her in a closing circle. She was trapped. Cressida shifted back into human form, naked and unashamed in the snow, steam rising from her heated skin. Did you really think you could walk away from the Alpha King? Cressida laughed, stalking closer. Did you think your little tantrum would go unpunished? Soraya backed up until her spine hit a tree trunk. He's ordered you brought back alive, Cressida said, extending a clawed hand. But he didn't say anything about undamaged. She lunged. Her claws raked across Soraya's face. The pain was blinding, searing, a white-hot agony that tore a scream from Soraya's throat. She felt blood pour down her cheek, felt her skin hanging in ribbons. And then she felt something else. The heat returned. Not the gentle flicker from the great hall, but a roaring inferno that erupted from her core and flooded every cell in her body. Her blood burned, her bones snapped, her vision went dark, then exploded into shades of violet she had never seen before. Enough. The voice in her head was not her own. It was primordial, feminine, and furious beyond measure. They have drawn our blood for the last time. Soraya opened her mouth to scream. What came out was a howl that shattered the night. The wolves surrounding Soraya scrambled backward, ears flat, tails tucked. Something was wrong. Something was terribly, impossibly wrong. Soraya's body convulsed. Her spine arched at an angle that should have been lethal. Her fingers elongated, nails blackening into claws that dug furrows into the frozen earth. The thin white shift shredded as her form expanded, muscles rippling beneath skin that was darkening, shifting, becoming something else entirely. She was not just shifting. She was becoming. The wolf that rose from the snow was unlike anything the sea obsidian fang had ever witnessed. She stood 8 feet tall at the shoulder, dwarfing even the largest alpha. Her fur was not gray or brown or black. It was the color of midnight itself, so dark it seemed to absorb the torchlight. But threaded through that darkness were veins of deep violet, pulsing with an inner luminescence, like lightning frozen beneath the skin. Her eyes opened. They were not gold, the mark of an alpha. They were not amber or green or blue. They were pure, endless violet, glowing like twin moons in the darkness. Cressida stumbled backward, her arrogance crumbling into primal terror. What? What are you? The nightshade wolf lowered her massive head, her lips peeled back from fangs that gleamed like polished obsidian. A growl rumbled from her chest, so deep and resonant that it shook the snow from the branches overhead. The pack wolves fled. They didn't attack. They didn't try to capture her. 20 trained warriors scattered like frightened pups, howling in terror as they sprinted back toward the pack house. Only Cressida remained, frozen by fear or foolishness. The nightshade wolf took one step toward her. The ground beneath her paw fractured. Not from weight, but from power. Dark energy radiated from the beast, an aura so heavy it pressed against Cressida's chest like a physical force. Please, Cressida whimpered, dropping to her knees. Tears streamed down her face, freezing on her cheeks. Please, I'm sorry, I didn't know. The wolf's growl cut her off. You knew enough to hate. You knew enough to hurt. You knew enough to try to break what you could not understand. The words weren't spoken. They were projected directly into Cressida's mind, a psychic assault that made her nose bleed. Remember this moment, little viper. Remember what mercy looks like. Because I will only give it once. The nightshade wolf turned away from her cowering tormentor. She faced the black pine forest, the endless wilderness that stretched beyond pack territories, beyond kingdoms, beyond everything Soraya had ever known. She ran. Her massive paws devoured the distance. Trees blurred past her like shadows. Snow exploded in her wake. For the first time in her life, Soraya felt no chains, no ceiling, and no invisible hand pressing her down. She was free. She was powerful. She was awake. Behind her, in the courtyard of the Obsidian Fang Pack House, Alpha King Valdric Thorn stood at the window of the Great Hall, watching the impossible creature disappear into the darkness. His predator's eyes burned with something far more dangerous than anger, obsession. "Find out what she is," he murmured to his general. "Find out where she came from, and find out how I make her mine." Soraya ran until the fire in her blood cooled to embers. She didn't know how long she traveled. Hours. Maybe days. The wolf carried her consciousness like a passenger, navigating by instinct through frozen valleys and snow-laden ridges. She drank from icy streams. She sheltered in old caves. She ate nothing. When the shift finally released her, Soraya collapsed naked in a snowdrift, her human body small and fragile once more. The cold was killing her. She could feel it in her slowing heartbeat, in the blue tinge creeping across her fingers and toes. The wounds on her face had healed during the shift, but her energy was depleted. She had nothing left. "Get up," the wolf whispered in her mind, fainter now, exhausted from the effort of the first emergence. "Get up, or we die." "I can't," Soraya breathed, her words forming weak clouds of vapor. "I don't know how." "Then we die knowing we were free. That is more than most can claim." Soraya closed her eyes. She didn't hear the footsteps approaching through the snow. She didn't see the cloaked figure emerge from the tree line, pausing at the sight of her broken form. She only felt warmth. Strong arms lifted her from the snow. Someone draped a heavy fur over her body. A voice, deep and calm, spoke words she couldn't quite understand through the haze of hypothermia. Then darkness. When Soraya woke, she was not dead. This surprised her. She was lying in a bed softer than anything she had ever felt. Furs and quilts cocooned her body. A fire crackled somewhere nearby, its warmth seeping into her bones. The air smelled of pine, wood smoke, and something else. Rain and crushed herbs, an oddly soothing combination. She opened her eyes. The room was modest but well crafted. Log walls. A single window showing a mountain vista she didn't recognize. No gilded decorations, no marble floors. It felt like a sanctuary, not a palace. A man sat in a wooden chair beside the fire reading a leather-bound book. He was younger than she expected, perhaps late 20s, with dark hair that fell across his forehead in an unruly wave. His jaw was sharp, dusted with stubble. His frame was lean but powerful, the kind of strength built from use rather than vanity. He wore simple clothes, a gray wool tunic, dark trousers, boots that had seen years of travel. When he noticed her stirring, he closed the book and turned. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, gray with flecks of silver, and they held an intelligence that made Soraya immediately wary. "You've been unconscious for 2 days," he said, his voice unhurried. "Your core temperature dropped to levels that should have killed you. Whatever you are, you're remarkably difficult to destroy." Soraya tried to sit up. Pain flared through her muscles, and she fell back against the pillows with a gasp. "Easy." The man rose, pouring water from a clay pitcher into a wooden cup. He brought it to her, holding it to her lips. Small sips. Your body is still recovering. She drank, the cold water soothing her raw throat. Who are you? She managed. My name is Cale Renworth. He set the cup on the bedside table. I found you half dead in the northern pass, about 3 miles from the Ashfall border. You're lucky I was traveling through. No one else uses that route in winter. Why did you save me? Cale's expression shifted, something flickering behind those storm-gray eyes. Because I saw what you did before you collapsed. I saw the shift. He leaned back in his chair, studying her with unnerving intensity. I've read about creatures like you, legends, myths, bedtime stories to frighten children. He paused. A nightshade wolf hasn't been seen in over 1,000 years. Soraya's breath caught. You know what I am? I know what you might be. Cale reached into his tunic and produced a folded piece of parchment, yellowed with age. He unfolded it carefully, revealing an illustration. A massive wolf, black as midnight, with veins of violet light coursing through its fur. The nightshade wolves were the original enforcers of the moon goddess, Cale said quietly. They were not alphas or omegas. They were something outside the hierarchy entirely. Judges, executioners, destroyers of corrupt bloodlines. His eyes met hers. They were hunted to extinction 600 years ago by an alliance of alpha kings who feared their power. Soraya stared at the illustration. It was her. It was exactly what she had become. That's impossible, she whispered. I'm a wolf-less orphan. I'm nothing. You were suppressed, Cale corrected. Someone bound your wolf before you were old enough to remember. Someone who knew what you were and feared what you would become. He folded the parchment and tucked it away. The question is, who? And why did they leave you to suffer in the hands of a pack that tortured you? Soraya gripped the edge of the bed, her vision swimming. Everything she had ever believed about herself was crumbling. Who are you, really? She demanded. Why do you know all this? Cale stood, walking to the window. His silhouette was sharp against the mountain light. I am the last son of the Renworth line, he said quietly, exiled prince of the Ashfall kingdom, and I have spent the last decade searching for proof that the nightshade wolves still existed. He turned back to face her. You, Soraya Ven, are that proof. And if the wrong people discover you're alive, every alpha king on this continent will send armies to destroy you before you can threaten their power. The fire crackled. Somewhere outside, a wolf howled in the distance. Soraya met Cale's eyes. Then we'd better make sure they don't find me first. Over the following days, Kyle taught Soraya everything he knew. His cabin was remote, nestled in a valley between two peaks that even the most determined trackers would struggle to find. He called it the Hollow, a safe house he had established years ago during his exile. Soraya learned to eat again. Real food, hot stews thick with venison and root vegetables, fresh bread that Cale baked himself each morning. Her body, starved for so long, devoured everything with a hunger that bordered on feral. But it was the knowledge that truly fed her. The nightshade wolves were not born, Cale explained one evening, spreading texts across the table between them. They were chosen. The moon goddess herself would mark certain bloodlines, usually those who had suffered great injustice, and gift them with her shadow. Soraya traced her fingers over an illustration of a wolf wreathed in darkness. Why shadow? I thought wolves drew power from the moon's light. Most do. Alphas, betas, omegas. They all operate within the goddess's hierarchy. They compete for dominance under her silver gaze. Cale turned a page, revealing a diagram of interconnected wolf ranks. But the nightshade exists outside that hierarchy. They are the goddess's correction. When the powerful become corrupt, when the hierarchy fails the innocent, the nightshade rises to judge. To judge? Soraya repeated. Not to rule? The nightshade cannot be claimed, cannot be commanded. cannot be controlled by any alpha, no matter how strong. Kale's storm gray eyes met hers. That's why they were hunted. 600 years ago, the Alpha Kings formed an alliance called the Ember Covenant. They told their people the Nightshade Wolves were demons, abominations that threatened the natural order. In reality, they were terrified of being held accountable. Soraya's hands curled into fists, and they succeeded. They killed them all. They thought they did. Kale reached into a leather satchel and withdrew something wrapped in black velvet. He unfolded it carefully, revealing a pendant on a silver chain. The pendant was a crescent moon, but inverted, with a single violet gemstone at its center. This was found with you when you were an infant, hidden in your swaddling clothes. Soraya's breath caught. Where did you get this? I've been tracking Nightshade artifacts for years. This pendant surfaced on the black market 5 years ago. The seller claimed it came from a dead Omega's belongings, an Omega who had been executed for harboring a cursed child. Kale placed the pendant in Soraya's palm. Your mother, Soraya. She wasn't just some anonymous human. She was a descendant of the last Nightshade Alpha. She hid you with the obsidian fang, hoping you would be overlooked, forgotten, safe. Tears burned Soraya's eyes. She died for me. She died so that you could live long enough to awaken. Your mother's seal kept your wolf dormant. The wolf's bane the pack fed you and your food ensured it stayed that way. 2 locks on the same cage. Kale's voice softened. And whoever placed that initial binding, it wasn't random. It was deliberate, powerful, the kind of magic that requires sacrifice. Soraya clutched the pendant. She bound me to protect me. If your wolf had emerged when you were a child, the Ember Covenant would have found you within days. Their hunters still exist, Soraya. They call themselves the Ashen Circle now, and they have spies in every major pack. The moment you shifted in that forest, you sent a beacon across the entire continent. A chill ran down Soraya's spine. They're coming for me. Eventually, yes. But there's a more immediate problem. Kale stood, walking to the window. The sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of blood and gold. Valdric Thorn has declared you a fugitive. He's claimed that you attacked his delegation and fled like a criminal. He's offering a bounty for your capture, alive. Of course he is, Soraya muttered bitterly. His pride can't accept that an Omega walked away from him. It's more than pride. Kyle turned back to face her. When you resisted his alpha command, you did something that should be impossible. You demonstrated that his power has limits. If word spreads that a wolf less Omega defied the Alpha King and escaped, his authority crumbles. He needs to reclaim you, publicly, to prove that his dominance is absolute. Soraya stood, the pendant clutched in her fist. He can't claim me. You said so yourself. The Nightshade exists outside the hierarchy. The old laws say that, Kale agreed. But Valdric doesn't recognize the old laws. He recognizes power. And right now, you don't know how to use yours. He crossed the room, stopping an arm's length from her. Your wolf emerged in a moment of crisis. It was instinct, survival. But can you call her at will? Can you control the shadow? Soraya hesitated. She reached inward, searching for the presence that had spoken to her in the forest. She found only silence, a vast dark ocean with no shore in sight. No, she admitted. Then we train. Kyle extended his hand. I'm no nightshade, but I've studied their techniques. I've spoken with scholars who preserve the old ways in secret. I can teach you to control the shift, to harness the shadow, to become what you were meant to be. Soraya looked at his hand. She thought of Valdric's arrogant smile. She thought of Cressida's claws raking across her face. She thought of 21 years of cold floors and empty stomachs, and being treated like garbage. And if I master it? She asked. What then? Kale's expression hardened with something that looked like old pain. Then you do what nightshades have always done. You judge the corrupt, you protect the innocent, you tear down the tyrants who hide behind tradition. Soraya clasped his hand. Then teach me, she said. Teach me how to make them remember my name. Days blurred into weeks as Soraya pushed her limits. Every morning before dawn, Kale woke her for physical conditioning, running through knee-deep snow, climbing frozen cliff faces with bare hands, wrestling in wolf form until her muscles screamed for mercy. The afternoons were devoted to control. By the second week, she could shift at will. By the third week, she could hold the hybrid form, human body, wolf senses, claws and fangs at the ready. By the fourth week, she discovered the shadow. It happened during a sparring session. Kale lunged at her with a training blade, and Soraya raised her hand instinctively. Darkness erupted from her palm, solid as iron, deflecting the strike and sending Kale flying backward into a snowdrift. She stared at her hand. Tendrils of violet-black energy curled around her fingers like living smoke. The shadow responds to emotion, Kale explained, picking himself up with a grunt. Fear, anger, the desire to protect. But the strongest trigger is judgment. When you see injustice, your wolf will give you the power to punish it. A horn echoed across the valley. Kale's head snapped toward the sound, his body tensing. That's the warning signal. He grabbed his cloak and blade. Someone has crossed the outer perimeter. They ran to the overlook at the edge of the valley. Below, a procession was winding through the narrow mountain pass. 50 wolves in formation, carrying banners of black and gold. At their head rode a figure in dark armor, his amber stare visible even from this distance. Valdric Thorn. He had found her. How? Soraya breathed. How did he track us here? Kale's face was grim. It doesn't matter. He's here now, and he's brought enough warriors to level this valley. He turned to her, gripping her shoulders. Listen to me. You're not ready for a full confrontation. Your control is better, but against 50 trained soldiers and an alpha king, I won't run again. The words came out harder than Soraya intended. She saw Kale flinch, saw the flicker of concern in his storm-gray eyes. I spent 21 years running, she continued, her voice steadying. Running from bullies, running from beatings, running from my own shadow. When I walked away from Valdric, I made a choice. I chose to stop being a victim. She met Kale's gaze. I won't undo that choice by fleeing like a frightened pup. Kale studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Then we face him together. But we do it on our terms, not his. They descended to the valley floor as Valdric's procession reached the clearing before the cabin. The Alpha King dismounted with fluid grace, his black cloak billowing in the wind. His eyes found Soraya immediately, and his lips twisted into a cruel grin. Little Omega, he called out, his voice carrying across the snow. You've led me on quite the chase. I almost admire your spirit. Soraya stopped 20 paces from him, Kyle at her side. I'm not your Omega, she replied coolly. I never was. Valdric's grin widened. And yet here I am. 50 of my finest warriors. A month of tracking. All for a wolfless servant girl who scrubbed my floors. He spread his arms theatrically. You should be flattered. I'm disgusted, Soraya corrected. You came all this way because your ego couldn't handle rejection. That's not flattering. It's pathetic. A ripple of tension ran through Valdric's warriors. No one spoke to the Alpha King that way. Valdric's expression didn't falter, but something dangerous flickered in his gaze. Careful, little wolf. My patience has limits. So does mine. Valdric's attention shifted to Kale, sharpening with recognition. Renworth. The exiled prince. I should have known you'd be involved in this. He laughed. A cold sound, without warmth. What's your game? Training her to be your weapon against the crown? She's no one's weapon, Kyle replied evenly. She's a free woman who chose to walk away from your claim. By the old laws, you have no authority over her. The old laws are dead, Valdric snapped. I am the law. Every pack on this continent bows to my authority. Every Omega belongs to me if I desire her. He stepped closer, his aura flaring. And I desire this one. Soraya felt the pressure. It was stronger than before, refined, targeted, but so had she grown stronger. She reached inward, found the dark ocean, and let the wolf rise to meet him. Shadows curled around her feet. Her eyes flickered violet. The pressure shattered. Valdric stumbled back, his composure breaking for the first time. His warriors drew weapons, growling, but they didn't advance. They could feel what their king felt, something that made their wolves whimper. "What are you?" Valdric demanded, his voice hoarse. "I am the thing your ancestors tried to destroy," Soraya said, and her voice carried the weight of centuries. "I am the judgment they feared. I am the nightshade wolf, and I bow to no king." Silence. Then Valdric laughed. It started low, building to a genuine sound of dark amusement. A nightshade. Incredible. His eyes gleamed with something worse than anger now. Hunger. Obsession. "Do you have any idea what you're worth?" "A living legend. The last of a bloodline thought extinct." "I'm a person," Soraya corrected coldly. "Something you've never understood. A person can be persuaded, claimed, bred." Valdric's expression sharpened. "The old laws say a nightshade cannot be commanded by an alpha. But they don't say she can't be mated to one, and a mating bond changes everything." Soraya's blood ran cold. He wasn't planning to force her into servitude. He was planning to force a bond. "You can't force a mating bond," Kyle said, stepping forward. "It requires consent." "Under normal circumstances," Valdric agreed, "but there's an older ritual, the trial of dominance. If an alpha defeats a contested mate in single combat, the goddess recognizes his claim." He gestured to his warriors, who parted to reveal a flat circle of trampled snow. "I challenge you, Soraya Ven. Submit to me now and be my queen, or face me in the circle." "And if she refuses both?" Kale demanded. Valdric's expression went flat. "Then I burn this valley to ash, kill you slowly, and take her by force." Soraya's hands trembled. Not with fear, with rage. "He sees me as a prize, a trophy." "Then show him what the trophy thinks of the hunter," her wolf growled. Soraya stepped forward. "Soraya, no." Kyle reached for her arm. She shook him off gently. "I accept your challenge, Valdric Thorn." Her voice rang across the valley. "But when I win, you will release every Omega in your harem. You will abolish the claiming ceremony forever, and you will kneel before me." Valdric's grin turned savage. "When I win," he countered, "you will bear my heirs. You will stand at my side as proof that even legends submit to me." He extended his hand. "Do we have a deal?" Soraya clasped his hand. "We have a deal." The trial of dominance would begin at dawn. The night before the trial, Soraya didn't sleep. She sat on the ridge overlooking the clearing where the circle had been prepared. Torches burned at its perimeter, casting flickering shadows across the trampled snow. Kale found her there, a fur cloak in his hands. "You'll freeze," he said, draping it over her shoulders. "I can't feel the cold anymore." Soraya pulled the cloak tighter anyway. "The wolf runs too hot." Kale sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. For a long moment, neither spoke. "You don't have to do this," he finally said. "We could fight our way out. Running won't stop him." Soraya's gaze remained fixed on the circle below. "This ends tomorrow, one way or another." "He's not just strong, Soraya. He's clever, vicious. He's killed challengers twice his size." "Then I won't underestimate him." "He fights with pride," her wolf murmured. "We fight with purpose. That is the difference." Soraya finally turned to look at Kale. In the torchlight, his features seemed softer, younger. She realized with a start that she trusted him. Not the wary trust of necessity, but something deeper. "What's your weakness?" she asked quietly. Kale held her gaze. "Right now? Watching you walk into that circle alone?" The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither was ready to address. Soraya looked away first. "I'll win," she said. "And then we'll figure out the rest." Dawn came cold and gray. The circle was 30 paces in diameter, marked by stones pressed into the frozen ground. Valdric's warriors formed a ring around it. Soraya entered from the south. She had shed the furs, wearing only training clothes. Around her neck hung the inverted crescent pendant, the violet gemstone glowing faintly. Valdric entered from the east. He had stripped to the waist, revealing a torso corded with muscle and old scars. His dark hair was loose, framing a face that radiated cruel confidence. "Last chance, little wolf," he called. "Yield now, and I'll be gentle." Soraya didn't answer. She closed her eyes and reached inward. "Are you ready?" she asked the darkness. "We have always been ready," the wolf replied. "Show him what we are." Soraya opened her eyes. They were violet fire. "Begin!" a general barked. Valdric shifted mid-stride, his body exploding into a massive black wolf that lunged with terrifying speed. He aimed for her throat. Soraya didn't shift. She raised her hand. Shadows erupted from her palm, forming a wall of solid darkness that Valdric slammed into with a sickening crunch. He tumbled backward, skidding across the snow. Murmurs rippled through the watching warriors. Valdric rose, shaking his massive head. Blood trickled from his muzzle. His eyes burned with fury. He lunged again, feinting left and striking right. Soraya stepped into the attack, shadows coiling around her arm, and delivered an uppercut that sent him crashing into the stone boundary. "Impossible," someone whispered. Valdric shifted back to human form, spitting blood onto the snow. "You think a few tricks will save you?" He wiped his mouth. "I was holding back." He shifted again, but this time he didn't lunge. He circled, building speed, becoming a black blur. He struck from behind, his claws raking across her back. Pain flared, hot blood ran down her spine. He struck again, and again. He was wearing her down. "Shift," the wolf urged. "Match his speed." Soraya let the transformation take her. The nightshade wolf erupted from her skin, 8 feet of midnight and violet lightning. She caught Valdric mid-strike, her jaws clamping around his torso. She lifted him and slammed him into the earth so hard it cratered. Valdric howled in pain, but he twisted, sinking his fangs into her foreleg. Bone crunched. Soraya roared, releasing him. They separated, circling again. Both were bleeding now. Both were slowing. "You're strong," Valdric admitted, panting. "But strength isn't everything." He glanced toward Kale. "Kill the exile," he commanded his warriors. "Now." 12 wolves broke from the perimeter, charging toward Kale. Soraya's heart seized. No, she couldn't protect him and fight Valdric simultaneously. If she turned, Valdric lunged, his jaws aimed for her throat. Time slowed, and the nightshade made a choice. She didn't turn to save Kale. She didn't block Valdric's attack. She embraced it. Valdric's fangs sank into her shoulder. The pain was excruciating, but it brought him close enough. Soraya opened her jaws and clamped them around his neck. She didn't bite down. Not yet. "Yield," she projected into his mind, her psychic voice a thunderclap. Valdric thrashed, clawing at her. She tightened her grip. "Yield, or die." The wolves attacking Kale hesitated, looking back at their king. Valdric went still. His body shifted back to human form, trapped in the jaws of a monster. "I yield," he choked out. "I yield." Soraya released him. He collapsed onto the snow, gasping, broken. The nightshade wolf raised her head and let out a howl that echoed across the mountains. Kale stood at the edge of the circle, untouched. The 12 wolves who had attacked him were on their knees, foreheads pressed to the ground. They had submitted the moment their king fell. Soraya shifted back to human form. She stood over Valdric's broken body, her chest heaving. The wounds on her back were already closing, the nightshade's healing power knitting flesh at unnatural speed. Kyle rushed to her side, draping a cloak over her shoulders. "It's over," he breathed. "You did it." "The deal," Soraya said, her voice hoarse. She looked down at Valdric. "Every Omega in your harem. Released. The claiming ceremony. Abolished. And you kneel." Valdric's eyes blazed with humiliation. "You can't expect me to—" "I expect you to honor your word," Soraya interrupted. "Or shall I tell every pack on this continent that the Alpha King is an oathbreaker?" An Alpha's word was sacred. To break it publicly was to forfeit all claim to honor. Valdric trembled with suppressed rage. Then, slowly, agonizingly, he lowered himself to his knees. "The Omegas will be released," he ground out. "The claiming ceremony is abolished." Soraya rose to her feet. "Then we're done here." She turned to walk away. A horn blast shattered the dawn, not from Valdric's procession, from the mountain pass beyond. 3 sharp notes, then silence. Kale went pale. "That's the Ashen signal." "The Ashen circle?" Soraya spun, scanning the tree line. "Here? Now?" They must have been tracking Valdric's forces, waiting to see who won. Kyle drew his blade. "They're not here for him. They're here for you." Shadows moved in the forest. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Figures in gray cloaks emerged, surrounding the valley on all sides. They wore silver masks and carried weapons that gleamed with unnatural violet light. Wolf's bane weapons, designed to kill nightshades. At their head strode a woman in crimson robes, her mask shaped like a wolf's skull. "The nightshade reveals herself at last," the woman called out. "We have waited 6 centuries for this moment." "I am High Inquisitor Morwen of the Ashen Circle," she continued. "In the name of the Ember Covenant, I claim this abomination for purification." Valdric staggered to his feet. "This is my territory. You have no authority here." Morwen laughed, a hollow sound. "The Covenant predates your dynasty, little king. Stand aside, or be reminded why your bloodline learned to fear ours." Valdric hesitated. Soraya watched his face, watched the calculation. He could sacrifice her. Let the Ashen Circle take her. Solve his humiliation problem. Their eyes met. Valdric's jaw tightened. He looked at Morwen, then at Soraya. The Ashen Circle didn't just want her. They wanted to restore the Covenant. They wanted to control all Alphas again. That he could not allow. He stepped forward, placing himself between Soraya and the High Inquisitor. "She defeated me in ritual combat," Valdric said. "By the old laws, she has earned my protection. If you want her—" He shifted into his wolf form, wounded but still dangerous. "You go through me first." Kyle stepped up beside him, blade raised. The remaining warriors fell into formation. Morwen tilted her head behind her skull mask. "So be it." She raised her hand. The Ashen Circle attacked. The battle exploded across the valley. Valdric's warriors clashed with the Ashen Circle in a maelstrom of fangs, blades, and blood. The violet glowing weapons carved through wolf flesh with horrifying efficiency, but the pack fighters were fierce. Kale fought beside Soraya, his blade a blur. He cut down 2 gray-cloaked hunters in as many heartbeats. "We need to reach Morwen," he shouted. "Cut! Off the head!" Soraya saw the High Inquisitor standing on a ridge above the battle, chanting words that made the air feel wrong. Violet energy crackled around her. "She's amplifying the weapons," Soraya realized. "They're drawing from her." "Then stop her!" Soraya shifted, the nightshade wolf bursting forth. She charged through the battle, shadow tendrils sweeping enemies aside. Hunters screamed as the darkness touched them. She reached the ridge in seconds. Morwen stopped chanting. Impressive, the High Inquisitor said calmly. Your ancestors could do the same. It didn't save them. She raised a hand, and violet lightning arced toward Soraya. The nightshade caught it. The energy struck her chest and absorbed into her, flowing through her veins, feeding the shadows. Morwen's composure fractured. Impossible. That was concentrated wolf's bane. My mother bound me with wolf's bane for 21 years, Soraya growled. I have metabolized your poison. I am immune. She lunged. Morwen dodged, pulling a curved blade from beneath her robes. The Inquisitor's fang, forged from the bones of the last Nightshade Alpha. She slashed. The blade carved a line across Soraya's flank. This wound didn't heal immediately. It burned, suppressing regeneration. Soraya snarled, circling. I have killed 6 wolves who claimed Nightshade heritage, Morwen said. Pretenders, frauds. You are stronger. But strength without wisdom is merely a louder way to die. She aimed for Soraya's throat. Soraya caught the blade in her jaws. The wolf's bane burned her tongue, sent agony screaming through her skull. But she held on. She bit down. The Inquisitor's fang shattered. Morwen stumbled back, staring at the broken hilt. No. That blade has never. Your blade was forged from my ancestors' bones, Soraya said. His spirit has waited 600 years for this moment. She felt it then, a presence joining her own. Not just the wolf, something older. A chorus of voices rising from the shadows. Every nightshade who had fallen to the Ember Covenant's cruelty. We are with you, they whispered. Finish it. Soraya opened her jaws and released the judgment howl. It was not sound, it was obliteration. A wave of violet-black energy erupted, sweeping across the battlefield. Every Ashen Circle hunter it touched collapsed. Their weapons crumbled to ash, their masks fractured. Kyle dropped to one knee, clutching his head, but the agony passed in seconds. He was not corrupt. He was not judged. Valdric's warriors rose, shaken but unharmed. Only the guilty had fallen. Morwen fell to her knees, clutching her head as the psychic assault overwhelmed her. What are you doing to me? You spent your life hunting innocents, Soraya said, stalking toward her. You called yourself righteous while butchering children. She stood over the High Inquisitor, shadows curling around her like living serpents. I am showing you every death you caused, every scream you ignored. Morwen's shrieks turned to sobs. Her mask fell away, revealing a face twisted with anguish. Please, she begged, make it stop. Soraya looked down at her. The old Soraya, the girl who scrubbed floors, would have shown mercy. The Nightshade Wolf knew better. The final mercy, Soraya said quietly. You don't deserve it. But your victims do. She placed a paw on Morwen's chest. Violet light flared. When it faded, there was nothing left. Not a body. Not a ghost. The High Inquisitor was simply gone. 3 months later, the world had changed. The Ashen Circle was dissolved. Without Morwen's leadership and with their weapons destroyed, the remaining members scattered. The Ember Covenant was formally revoked. Soraya did not claim a throne. She didn't need one. The Northern Sanctuary, as Kale's Valley came to be known, became a haven for displaced Omegas and those fleeing corrupt packs. Word spread of a nightshade who protected the innocent and judged the wicked. Valdric Thorn returned to his kingdom humbled. The Omegas in his harem were released. The claiming ceremony became a relic of history. Cressida Vane had fled to the rogue lands the night of Soraya's transformation, stripped of rank and pack, never to be seen in proper territory again. On the morning of the spring equinox, Soraya stood on the ridge overlooking the sanctuary. The snow was melting, revealing patches of green beneath. Kale climbed up to join her. 2 cups of steaming tea in his hands. The council envoy arrived, he said, handing her a cup. They want to formally recognize you as arbiter of the old laws. Soraya sipped her tea. And what do you think? Kale smiled, that rare expression that transformed his sharp features. I think you've spent your entire life being told what you are. Runt, omega, throwaway. He faced her fully. Maybe it's time you decide for yourself. Soraya looked out at the valley below, at the cabins being built, at the wolves training in the courtyards, at the children playing in the meadows. I think, she said slowly, that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Kale set down his tea. There's one more thing. He withdrew the inverted crescent pendant. Soraya Ven, Nightshade Wolf, arbiter of the old laws. He took a breath. Will you allow me to court you? Properly. No challenges, no claims. Just a man asking a woman for a chance. Soraya felt the warmth bloom in her chest. She took the pendant. Then she took his hand. Yes, she said. I think I'd like that. In the distance, a lone black wolf watched from the tree line. Valdric. His eyes held no malice now, only resignation. He dipped his head once, a final acknowledgement, and disappeared into the forest. Soraya didn't watch him go. She was too busy watching the sunrise with the man who had seen her worth before she could see it herself. The throwaway was gone. The judge had risen, and the world would never forget her name. If you loved this story and want more enemies to lovers' chaos and overpowered heroines making arrogant alphas regret their life choices, smash that subscribe button. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.